Okay, so today's project on my all-wheel drive, my 2009 SX4 guys, is we're going to actually change the struts. They've been bitched for some time, for a long time, and they've just got to the point where there's absolutely no damping on the car. And I noticed the other day the car almost went in a destructive resonance. So it's time to address this. Yeah, so we'll get at this. I'll show you all the particulars on the drawing once we've got the car up on jack stands and things are apart a wee bit. I'll give you all the torque specs and we'll go through the process. Okay, so the car is up on jack stands clearly, guys, as you can see. Yes, it is chunked in the rear. So we're gonna have to remove the plastic, the shroud on the cowl here, in order to access the top side of the struts, obviously on the tower. And first things first, I'm going to use a wire wheel and clean the fastener as best I can. As you can see, I don't recall whether these have ever been I don't recall whether it was these front bearings or on the other SX4 the bearings I did. I'm too lazy to check the logbook. But as you can see, these are going to be a challenge to remove. As is the nut there and the stud. Everything is unbelievably corroded, as you can see, so that's going to be the biggest part of the job, is just dealing with seized fasteners and whatnot. I did in fact buy new nuts and bolts for this a long while ago. As I said, it's been quite some time since I intended to get to this job. So just here's the part numbers for the nuts, and I show you that because for the obsessive, the manual does say not to reuse that nut. The bolt, however, can be, but in any case, there's the part number for the bolts as well. We require 4, of course, 2 for each side. And yeah, so I'll just wire wheel that stuff and we'll see how that goes. Just scrub all the threads down best that you can, guys. Give yourself a half a chance of getting these fasteners undone. 14 mil there on the bracket for the brake pipe, and a liberal application of you know, your choice of penetrating oil. Same old, same old. 14 millimeter to hold the nut on the link there, guys, and of course it's a ball joint, so you'll also need a 5 millimeter Allen, internal wrenching Allen, in order to remove it. And I just gave it a wee buzz with the impact there to break the nut loose initially, and it's turning fine now. So on the through bolts from the strut to the knuckle there, guys, a 19 millimeter on the is the nut on the aft side. Note the orientation. The bolt comes from the forward side through, and yeah, I've already broken them loose with the Johnson bar. These are not going to move on my car because I know they're going to be so badly corroded. Again, already broken loose with the Johnson bar. So the bolt on the leading edge there, guys, is actually a 17 mil. So just work it back and forth because these can be seized something fierce. Fortunately, these are not too bad. So of course, if you're going to reuse the hardware, in spite of what the manual tells you, well, let's be realistic. I certainly have done so in the past. Put the nut back on before you lambaste the bolt trying to get out, so you don't damage the threads. Same old, right? Make sure the bracket for the, as I said, the brake line is adrift 14 mil, and the line for the ABS sensor, the wiring for the harness for the ABS sensor, wheel speed sensor. So percussion device on the nut. Keep turning it, keep tapping it. It'll start working its way out, as you can see here. These are not too bad, guys, but I had one hell of a time with these in the past, so just be aware you might be in for we bet you time. Be patient, don't get crazy. So with the 2 through bolts extracted there, guys, you might require just a wee bit of persuasion on the knuckle to separate it from the strut bracket there, and maybe position something to take the load off of the assembly, the strut, the knuckle assembly, as you part it ways from the strut. So I was planning on reusing the link here, but I don't know if the camera can pick that up, guys. There's definitely a bit of movement in there. You can maybe hear it better than you can see it. So yeah, quick trip to the local auto part shop. I'm gonna replace those as well. So just pull the cowl plastic off here, guys. It comes off in 2 pieces, and of course to get access to the top of the strut, just plastic clips on the base of the windshield there, and a couple of plastic buttons. A couple of plastic buttons type thingy. Remove them. Straightforward. So you'll need a 17mm, ideally with the offset like that, and 6mm to hold the top, so you can remove the nut at the top of the assembly here. There's another nut below this, so this is just going to allow us to drop it, and I've indexed this. It's moved a wee bit here, as you can see, so I can put it back to the original position. And clearly the strut removed from the vehicle, guys. I like to just take a measurement of how deep the nut sits on the threads there, and clearly we need to put a spring compressor on it before we disassemble it. If you don't know what you're doing with this, guys, this can pose a risk, a serious safety risk. Don't do it. Pay somebody else to do it if you're not comfortable with it. So clearly this strut, this spring, is under a compressive load, and we need to compress the spring in order to unload the strut, in order to remove the nut. So for fuck's sake, do not take this nut off without compressing the spring. As I said, if you're not familiar with this, if you're not comfortable with this, if you don't have tooling and maybe some experience with it, just pay somebody. Save your own neck. So with of course the same 6mm Allen holding the internal portion of the threaded rod there on the strut, guys. This time it's a 19mm offset. You'll need to break the nut loose here, and just obviously this spring is compressed now, so I don't know if I can do it with one hand here. The spring is loose on the saddle here, so now I can start relieving the tension on the rod here. And of course, if you get the sense, you get the notion that this is still under load, stop and readjust the spring before you hurt yourself. This should be completely loose, of course, as you're removing it. So here's the strut disassembled here, guys. Disaster free, thankfully. The boot, or the gator, of course, right? I bought a new bump stop and gator. It's a wee bit of a different arrangement because it's aftermarket, of course, but it's okay. I'm going to reuse the original mount and bearing and stuff reluctantly, because this Moog kit seems to really bear no resemblance to the original. So to hell with that. And as I said, yeah, this is a wee bit of a different configuration, but that's fine. That should be alright. And the strut itself, everything appears to be in the right configuration, in the right location. That's okay. And it was KBY, this company here. There's the part number. This is the right hand side, of course. Just make sure you follow the stack, obviously, guys, when you reassemble it. And as you can see, as I've got the nut on the top there, key point is to just make sure it's centralized. The strut shaft proper is centralized. The house is a bit dark in there on the bearing as it goes through, so you don't damage anything. It's just a nylon Durlin bearing or plastic of some sort. So that's it, fully assembled, guys, ready to go back in the car. Top plate and the nut are obviously just sitting there for convenience. As I said, just make sure the stack is correct. And the nut here is supposed to be torqued to 40 foot-pounds. 40 foot-pounds. You're a better man than me if you can get it to 40 pounds with all the flex that's going on with all the bushings and stuff, but good to tight. Go with the German torque spec on that one. Right, so that's it. As I said, just make damn sure that as you run the nut up on it, that the plastic bushing there, or bearing, is actually centralized on the shaft. So since I'm the guy who's going to take this stuff apart, I just put a wee touch of anti-seize on the shank of the bolt here, guys, and I like to put a wee bit of thread locker on the threads of the bolt, of course. So torque spec is mentioned here. Again, the bolt comes in from the forward edge. There's a note to that effect, in fact.
strut bracket bolt insert from vehicle front, as we saw on the removal. And the torque spec on that is C, which is 101.5 foot-pounds. So there's the strut in position, guys. Everything is buttoned up. Everything's torqued to the specs I mentioned. Don't forget the little bracket for the brake line, and of course the harness for the wheel speed sensor goes back in position. Everything seems to be in the correct position. I'm happy to report. Sometimes for the aftermarket parts you never know. New drop link, absolutely raw mild steel. Man. Torque spec on those are 36.5 foot-pounds. That's 37 foot-pounds to you and me. So the top nut here, guys, also 36.5 foot-pounds, 37 foot-pounds. Everything centralized, indexed. Yeah, so there it is on the drawing there. Also A, so same torque spec. That nut. And if you're lucky like me, this is absolutely C solid. I gotta break a windshield or something if I hit this any harder. So I'm just gonna leave that in situ. I'm not gonna work with it in situ. You can see I've already got it removed. Just a matter of installing all the, obviously the same thing on the left hand side. That's it, boys. Test drive went really well. No issues, I'm happy to report. Drives like a completely different car. Should have done that a dozen years ago. Well, no, a dozen years ago, it was brand new then. I should have done it 3 years ago. It's been clanking for the longest time. Well, I guess I shouldn't leave the rears too much longer. They're probably shot as well at 12 years old. Right, that's it, boys. Cheers.